Hey, last Tuesday, I came to Open Gym, and we're playing volleyball, and we had a good time. There's some people here that were playing. We had a good time, right? We were playing game after game after game. We switched teams, we switched sides, we switched teams, and we switched sides, and we had a good time out there. Anyone who was there when we played last Tuesday? We were there. Yeah, we had a good time. But I noticed something a little weird. The gym was about to close. It was the last game. They said, let's run it back one more game. And the energy just shifted all of a sudden. Suddenly everyone was kind of on their A game now. And I was like, man, I just came here to have fun. Everyone stopped joking. Everyone stopped smiling. Everyone started playing more aggressively. And they were 100% serious. And so the score was 11-11. It was game-winning point. The bleachers are absolutely silent because there was no one else there. And they serve the ball. Boom, it goes over the net. Then it goes over the net. And we're getting it back and forth for like minutes, bro. And it doesn't sound like a long time, but it was a long time. It was so long where it's like, where you kind of get bored of, it's like, oh man, like no one is letting up. No one is making a mistake. Everyone is 100% invested into the game, and they're putting their bodies on the line, and they're diving for the ball, and they're using their feet and doing these impossible moves to hit it back over the net. I said, dang. But I said, you know what? We've been here a little too long. Let me go ahead and shut it down. Let me do my thing. Let me shut it down. For those of you know, I'll be shutting it down. So I told my teammate when the ball's still going up, and I said, yo, set me up. When the ball comes this way, set me up. And they slowed it down, and they set me up, and I jumped up, and boom! It was crazy, right? Game point, game over. But something that was interesting about that wasn't the fact that I made the point. It was that win or lose, people on both sides of the court had a similar reaction. The winners went like this, ah, yeah, oh, ah. They started doing some of that. And the losers went, oh, different vowel shapes and different mouth shapes, but the same ferocity, right? And I thought to myself, man, how primal of us, how primitive that a ball landing on a certain side of a string can cause us to act like cavemen, regardless, it's boys and girls there. And it's not just youth, it's young adults and adults there. Anyone who feel it was there turned into a caveman. And I began to wonder, how can a basic instinct like rivalry bring out the best, but also the worst in us? Now, it's not surprising that competition can cause us to be better, to grow stronger, to become more creative, to be innovative, to think outside the box. And we see this in different dynamics, like with LeBron and Kobe, right? It made the NBA much more enjoyable to watch when they were playing. We see this in the past with Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, right? They had to put their mind to the limits to create a revolutionary product that would, we can't live without these products anymore. We also saw it in the rap game with Biggie and Tupac, right? With their disses that were historical, they were biblical, right? And they cemented themselves as GOATs, greatest of all time in the rap industry. In fact, since the beginning of time, humans have always been rivalrous. For example, the very first book of the Bible, we see 5 depictions of heated rivalry. We see this in Isaac and Ishmael, Jacob and Esau, Rachel and Leah, Joseph and his brothers that we just learned about recently, and the story that we'll be covering today, Cain and Abel. The only thing is, the scripture wasn't written to highlight the benefits of rivalry. In fact, in each of these stories, we see the consequences of when rivalry was taken too far. Now, before I get started, I do have a quick survey to conduct, and so depending on the response that I get, will determine whether or not if I finish this sermon or I go downstairs and I join the Spanish class. So I need participation from everyone, please. So by show of hands, how many of us know about the story of Cain and Abel? You've at least heard it before. Raise your hand and keep your hands up for just a second. How many of us have read the story? You went to Genesis 4, verse 1 through 24, and you read it all. Okay, how many of us have read it in the last year? In the last month? In the last week? Cool, excellent. There we go. We went from a majority to the front row. My man Shorty and Keeman and Sean. Now, Why do I ask that question? Or why do I ask these questions? Because something that tends to happen as believers, we think because we grew up in church, or because we go to Bible study every Wednesday, or because we follow Mike Todd on Instagram, we've learned all we can about a specific story in the Bible. But let me ask you this. Have you ever watched a movie you hadn't seen in a while? Right? It's been a long time since you've seen it, and you watch it, and suddenly there's jokes that make sense. You go, whoa, that's kind of just slipped past me. I never noticed that. Or certain scenes, they hit you in the feels a little bit because you can now relate to what the character is going through. You go, dang, that's real, man. I never picked up on that. Or maybe you realize that the plot is a bit more complicated than you remember, right? You describe it to someone, no, it's really cool, we should chill and watch it. And you go, whoa, I don't remember all this being in this movie. The same thing happens with popular stories in the Bible. We're familiar with the names of the characters. We're familiar with the structure. We know the highlighted events that happen in the story, but we forget the small details, right? The small nuances that make these characters that were written about thousands of years ago human and relatable. And so, now that a majority of us have confessed, it's been a little minute since we've dusted off this classic. We're going to comb through the scripture today, and we're going to see what God has ready for us to be revealed. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "Now Adam had sexual relations with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant. When she gave birth to Cain, she said, 'With the Lord's help, I have produced a man.' Later, she gave birth to his brother and named him Abel. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd, while Cain cultivated the ground. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected." This is how many verses we're into this chapter, and we already see Cain's villain origin story, okay? But because this story is so compressed, we're going to have to make an educated guess and say this is not the first time that Abel was looked at more favorably than Cain. In verse 1, Cain is born. In verse 2, Abel was born. Still in verse 2, they're both working. One's a rancher, one's a farmer. So that indicates a decade, 2 decades, a decade and a half has passed. And whenever called on Abel for a sacrifice, he sacrifices the best he has to offer, right? And God is happy. And as a result, God blesses everything that Abel did. In other words, everything that he touched turned to gold, right? His livestock was nice and healthy. People liked him. People respected him. He didn't have a problem getting swiped right on Tinder. I mean, everything was going perfect for him. Whereas Cain, maybe he went through life doing what he wanted to do. Maybe he went through life on his own terms, and he made sacrifices that he thought was enough. He just provided some of his crop to God as a sacrifice. Now, I don't know about his life for certain. The Bible doesn't tell us. The story doesn't tell us. It's a very limited story. But I do know anyone who offers God a second-rate sacrifice probably has their priorities mixed up, probably makes poor decisions. Y'all with me? Cool. Let's keep going. So Cain is angry. Nothing that he wants ever happens. But then again, he doesn't really want it, because if he did, he would make the appropriate sacrifice. But to make matters worse, the existence of his brother Abel is rubbing salt into his open wounds. Abel is a reminder of all his failures. Abel is a reminder of all his shortcomings. Abel is a reminder of all his poor choices. Now, I want everyone here, I want you to think about that person that you have beef with, right? You got beef with someone at school or at work. Not at our church. There's no beef here at church, but at school and at work. And you can't really pinpoint why you have beef with someone. You just know there's a little bit of tension there, right? Well, hold on. Let me reword that, okay? Because if you don't like someone and that person doesn't know that you don't like them or you got beef with them, that's not beef. What is that called? That's hating, right? That's not beef. So let me change the instruction a little bit, okay? Imagine someone that you hate on, and don't make them faces, right? I don't hate anyone. What? No, don't lie, okay? There's some haters in this room. I'm not gonna call them out, but think about it. Who's that person that you hate on, right? We all have that person that we follow on Instagram or Facebook, and every picture that they post, you zoom in. Really? they're dating again? You go, another cruise? Are you serious? Whoa. I think I touched a nerve there. There's someone that you hate on, okay? And I have a question for you. What about them do you have an issue with? Is it their relationship with God? No. Is it their powerful prayer life? No, I don't think so. Is it their unrelenting worship? No one answered. And I think it's because that's not what it is, right? I don't think so. And I don't think Cain was jealous of Abel's relationship with God either. I think Cain might have been sipping on some haterade, y'all know what that is? I don't know, right? He was sipping on some haterade, and he fell victim to what's known as mimetic desire. What's mimetic desire? I'll answer that question, person who has the same voice as me. Mimetic desire, I don't have the definition up here. It says the adoption of someone else's desire as our own. Now, this usually happens without our realizing of it. I'll give you an example. Y'all remember my boy Lewis? Man, that was my dog. Anyone remember? Y'all remember my boy Lewis? I got some pictures up here. I'm my boy Lewis. My dog since kindergarten. We had a class together every single, what y'all laughing at, all right? Every single year, we had a class together. Every single year. And Lewis wasn't able to make it today, but his mother was. Give him a round of applause. Yeah! One day in high school, I'm getting ready, and Lewis calls me. He says, bro, come outside. I said, for sure, because we would walk to school together. And I finished, getting fly. I look in the mirror. I'm like, okay, I'm ready. Let's go. Y'all laughing at? Y'all don't do that? Okay. And I walk outside. I open the door, and I stop right there. And in my driveway, at the end of my driveway, I see Lewis leaning on a blue Mustang, looking super cool. And I said, no. And he's on the Mustang. He was like, yes. We hugged each other and we laughed and we cried. And, because we're just two young black boys in America trying to make it. We said, we made it. We're so excited, man. We jump in the car. We roll down the windows, of course. We start making our way to school. He handed me the aux. I put on some Thugger, free YSL, and we started driving to school. It was looking so cool. But then a teeny, winty, bitty, little tiny, small little thought crept into the back of my mind. A tiny one. And it said, hey bro, you need a car now. And I said, you're right. I need a car now. And so immediately I pulled out my phone and I downloaded CarMax and I downloaded the car, what is it, the Fox? What is the Fox? CarFox? I don't even know what it does. I downloaded. I said, let's see how much I can get with my snack bar money. I'm gonna put all my snack bar money into it. I'm gonna sacrifice the wings, get this car. That didn't work out. I texted my dad. I said, Dad, Lewis just got a Mustang, send. I expect when I get home from school for there to be a 911 Porsche sitting in the driveway. Send. If it's not there, I will unalive myself. No cap. Send. Then during that week or two, Lewis gets a job, and he started getting a little money. You get a little job, make a little money, started making little purchases, and he started buying himself some shoes. And it was shoes I didn't really like anyway, but when I saw him, I said, bro, this kind of fly low-key. Those are kind of tight, right? And then Lewis gets a second job. See, Lewis was an ambitious person, or is still ambitious to this day. And he gets a second job, and he's working at Jersey Mike's, and on the days that he's not working there, he's working at Applebee's, so he's getting 2 paychecks on Friday, and then he went and bought himself a 65-inch screen TV for his room. He put subwoofers in the back of his Mustang, and all that was cool. Like, I was not hating. That was tight, right? He shared it with me. We would play games. I would sit in his car, and we'd listen to music. But when I would leave his house, because he lived right behind me, when I would walk home and I would look down and see my shoes, I was kind of like, thanks, Mom, right? And then I would go home and I'd walk up the driveway and there's only 2 cars there, my mom and dad. There's nothing for me. And I was like, all right, thanks, Dad. And I walk inside my room and I turn on my 25-inch screen TV and I got to squint to see what's happening. And man, I started feeling some type of way, bro. And then my headphones, I had this pair of headphones that went through trial and tribulations, but it still worked. One headphone still worked if I held it at a certain angle, right? I had to hold it at a certain angle, but when I could hear Lewis's car going from around the corner, man, I began to see Lewis as my op, right? He was the opposition. He was my opponent, and he didn't even know all this was going on in my head. Now, let me stop talking about the story. I get the point. I'm getting a little frustrated, reliving my past, so I'm going to move on. So let's talk about Abel again. Abel brought his sacrifice. God said, that's what I'm talking about. Cain brings his sacrifice. God said, what are you talking about, right? And I can only assume Cain is looking at the floor, and he's furious. He's mad. He's like, man, I worked my fingers to the bone. I'm in the sun all day. I make sacrifices when I'm supposed to, and nothing ever works out in my favor. Everything is against me. That sound like anyone? If it doesn't, maybe let's make it a little bit translate into something more relatable. I come to church every Saturday if no one else has a quinceañera planned. I tithe my money if I have any left over from shopping. And I always read scripture whenever the pastor shows it on the PowerPoint. God, why can't things just work out for me? Is that starting to ring any bells? I hope so. Let's see what God has to say when we pitch hissy fits like this. Cain says, or the Lord says to Cain, why are you so angry? Why do you look so dejected? You will be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you. But you must subdue it and be its master. This is the last thing that Cain wants to hear. Because in your life, when things are going from bad to worse, and you're the reason why, there's nothing worse than someone in your ear telling you in a way that you cannot deny that you're entirely complicit for your own demise. That's what God just did. And I can imagine 15 or 20 years worth of moments where Abel was chosen over Cain. Abel got the promotion. Abel was shown the favor. Abel was given more responsibility. Flashed across his mind, fueling this rage for a rivalry Abel didn't even know existed. Cain has reached his boiling point. So what does Cain do? Well, the smart thing would be, let me think, listen to God, right? When the almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing, all-wise God tells you, hey, you have a character flaw, you might not realize it, a reasonable person would adjust accordingly, right? If someone tells you, hey, your fly is down, a reasonable person would zip it up, right? If they don't, I know, run, okay? Run. There's nothing, that person's unreasonable, run away, okay? Ladies, if someone tells you, hey, your eyelash is it's kind of hanging off, right? What are you going to do? Well, of course, you're going to jump on Instagram. You're going to look up Sandra. You're going to book an appointment. Deposit is non-refundable, so I'm letting you know now. I had to learn the hard way. And you're going to fix that eyelash, okay? And when it tells you that the decisions that you're making are leading you down a treacherous path to you becoming a homicidal maniac, you stop making those decisions. But Cain's not a reasonable person. Oh, at least he's not anymore. This rivalry that he's allowed to brew, this competition that he created in his mind clouded his judgment, and it festered to the point that it pushed him to the edge and there was no looking back. Abel is the ideal person, all right? He's that guy. He's someone that you would want to be, and he was also everything Cain was not. And so as Cain is staring at the floor, God is saying, bro, what is this? What is this sacrifice? He's staring at his floor, his teeth gritted, his fist balled up, and he's angry. He decides two things right then and there. One, destroy his ideal. If he's everything that I want to be, guess what? Not anymore. Second thing he decides to do is to destroy the favorite son of God. Cain invites Abel out into the field. Doesn't say how, it just says, maybe he said, hey, come help me out. I need your help out here. And as Abel's walking ahead of him, Cain is walking behind him, and he's plotting. And then Cain commits the first recorded murder in history. Now, this message is not supposed to have you pick sides and then demonize the other person, but to help you understand that although the goal is to be like Abel, we all have to understand that we have a little tiny bit of Cain inside of every single one of us. I want everyone here who thought about that person, when I said think about that person that you hate on, and everyone pretended that they don't hate. I don't hate. Someone said, I don't know anyone, so I don't know, right? I want you to think about that person again. And now I want you imagining reconciling with them, okay? God may be prompting you to take this awkward step toward reconciliation with someone that you are not on good terms with. Let me remind you what Hebrews 12:15 says. It says, look after each other so that none of you fails to receive the grace of God. Watch out that no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, corrupting many. Now, this verse could have ended with, watch out, no poisonous root of bitterness grows up to trouble you, period. It would have made sense, right? It makes sense. It has a subject and a predicate, and it makes the subject-verb agreement. It's all there, and it's still applicable. It's still a good life lesson. Don't let bitterness get in your heart. But by adding the word corrupting many, it speaks to the impact that rivalry has, especially in this story. And we're going to get to it in just a second. Guys, if we don't accept responsibility for the role in the conflict that we created, if we don't communicate effectively with family members and with friends and loved ones, this rivalry will ruin the relationship. So what now? In a brilliant but very dense fashion, this already short story accelerates through multiple generations of Cain's descendants. And if you insult, if you badmouth, if you criticize a member of Cain's first generation, he doesn't kill you, he kills 7 of you. And if you insulted a member of the second generation, he didn't kill 7 of you, he killed 7 times 7 of you. And as we follow this pattern and we move further down Cain's lineage, we reach Tubal-Cain, which is his great-great-great-great-grandson, his 4th generation, who the Bible describes as an expert in forging tools of bronze and iron. Other translations call him the artificer of war, unlocking large-scale warfare ultimately used to cut down people, tribes, and villages. Now, rivalry is a natural trait of being human, right? It's healthy, it's instinctively, we're born with it. And it undoubtedly brings out the best that humans have to offer. All the innovations, all the creations that we have, the best athletes that we have come from rivalry. But in the same breath, without it being controlled, it can bring mass destruction to our relationships and to lives. Now, to think that an unhealthy rivalry doesn't impact anyone else couldn't be further from the truth. It'll be passed down from generation to generation unless we take this sin that we all struggle with and be its master. Thank you.